Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this webinar about the Lower Thames Crossing consultation. This time the consultation is about the community impacts, and today we're going to be providing you with an update and summary of the impacts of our proposals on the community and the environment and how we plan to mitigate them. Specifically this evening, the route north of the River Thames up to the A13 in Thurrock. To be clear, this isn't an exhaustive account of the impacts and proposals, but rather we're providing you with an overview of some of the more notable elements and changes since our design refinement consultation last year. There are many other ways you can ask specific questions, and I'll give you more details on that in just a moment. We'll start off today by briefly introducing ourselves. My name is Sarah Walker and I'm from Highways England, and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar.
Hello there, I'm Gareth Fotherrow, the Development Director for Lower Thames Crossing, and I'll be helping to answer the questions a little later on.
Good evening, my name's Tim Wright. I'm the Head of Consents for Lower Thames Crossing, and I'll also be answering questions.
We also have Emma and Olivia with us today, who you can see on camera throughout the webinar. They're British Sign Language interpreters and will be providing sign language translation for those in attendance who are deaf or have hearing impairments. Should you wish to expand the view of the BSL interpreters at any time, just hover your mouse over their camera and click the button to expand. The webinar also has live captions. Today's webinar is going to be split into 3 sections. The first section is a live introduction to the scheme presented by me. The middle section is a pre-recorded presentation outlining the changes with a particular emphasis on Thurrock and the South Essex area. And the final section will be that live Q&A session where Gareth and Tim will be available to answer any questions that you may have about this consultation. We're going to begin this evening with an introduction to the Lower Thames Crossing project and give you an overview of why we're consulting again. We'll also let you know how your feedback from previous consultations has shaped the project, some recent changes, and then the impacts of the construction and operations the road will have on local communities and on the environment. At the end of today's session, we'll also be holding a Q&A session where we'll be taking and answering some of your questions about this consultation. We've produced a number of documents that help explain our plans, and as we move through the webinar, we'll signpost where you can find more information on a particular topic. These include our guide to the consultation, which is an overview of the information included in the consultation materials with directions on where to find out more detail in the technical documents. The construction update. This is an overview of the methods that would be used to build the new road and tunnel and changes to existing utilities infrastructure. It also details the measures proposed to mitigate potential adverse effects of construction. The operations update provides information on the new road, on junctions, the tunnel, utilities, environmental design, and green infrastructure. It also includes the impact the new road may have near you. It also includes the changes we've made since the last consultation, some updates to our traffic forecast and how the new road would impact the environment. Sorry for the little glitch there. And if I could recommend one set of documents to you, it would be the ward impact summaries. These documents go into a lot more detail about the changes and impacts the new road may have near you during its construction and operation. This covers topics such as traffic, noise, and air quality. The You Said We Did document is a summary of responses received during our 3 previous consultations and how these have been used to further refine the project's design. And last but not least, we produced a series of maps to help show you the project during construction and when open to traffic. There's also an interactive map on our dedicated consultation website. If you do have any questions, please do post them as and when they come to mind, and we'll answer as many of them as we can at the end of the presentation. But there are also a range of other ways that you can ask questions. If you want to speak to someone one-to-one, you can book a telephone call back from a member of the project team or come along to one of our consultation events. All consultation materials will be available on our dedicated website, or you can ask for a printed copy to be delivered to your home free of charge, or pick up copies at libraries and civic centres near the proposed route. We'll cover these again at the end and highlight the different ways you can make sure that you have your say. And so now our pre-recorded section will begin, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Hi, my name is Claire Donnelly and I'm here to take you through the details of our Community Impacts Consultation. There's a lot of information, so I'll be joined by my colleague John Barkman. Just to recap on that video, the Lower Thames Crossing is a proposed new road connecting Kent, Thurrock, Havering and Essex through two 2.6-mile tunnels beneath the River Thames. It would almost double road capacity across the river east of London, boosting local, regional and national economies, while offering new connections, better journeys and fewer delays. On the north side of the River Thames, the road would link to the A13 in Thurrock and the M25 in Havering. On the south side, it would link to the A2 and M2 in Kent. So let me start by telling you more about what we are consulting on. To get permission to build and operate the new crossing, we must follow a specific planning process and seek a Development Consent Order, or DCO. In October 2020, we submitted an application for a DCO, but following feedback and discussions with the planning inspectorate, we withdrew it to provide more information. We've been working to address the inspectorate's feedback, and as part of the process, we are holding this further round of public consultation to seek your views on our plans to build and operate the Lower Thames Crossing and how we will mitigate its impact, changes to the project since design refinement consultation in 2020, and how responses received at each of our previous consultations have informed the development of the project. And this is where we start with our presentation tonight. Consultation and engagement have been critical in helping us design the project to reduce the impact and to maximise the benefits. We've carried out a record-breaking programme of consultation, engagement and design development. Over the last 8 years, we've been in public consultation for over 350 days, with almost 90,000 of you giving us your views. In 2018, we held a statutory consultation to provide members of the public and anyone with an interest in the project with an update of the route as well as an opportunity to have their say. This was followed by a supplementary consultation in January of 2020, which was held to obtain people's views on the changes made as a result of feedback from statutory consultation and technical engagement with stakeholders. A further consultation, our design refinement consultation, was held in summer of 2020. We've also carried out environmental surveys, traffic modelling, and detailed design work, such as identifying diversions to existing utilities. These are just a handful of the changes we have made following your feedback. To improve your journey, we have provided 3 lanes along most of the route, including the tunnel. To reduce the impact on the local community, we refined the design of some of the slip roads at the A13 and 1089 junction to reduce visual impacts, move roads away from properties, and improve safety and connectivity. We've lowered the height of the road in some locations by as much as 5 to 6 metres, which is between 15 and 18 feet. And now 80% of the whole route is in either tunnel, a cutting, or behind an embankment. We've also added more acoustic barriers and earthworks to reduce noise. The look and material of those noise barriers will be developed by our contractor at the detailed design stage, but you can see their proposed height and their locations in the consultation material. We've maintained Rectory Road on its existing alignment and have reduced impacts on Orsett Showground. And we have removed the rest and service area, maintenance depot and Tilbury Junction, which had significant impacts on the environment and local communities. To reduce the impact on the environment, we've increased the number of trees we're replanting and are now planning 260 hectares of new woodland, 3 times more than that which we will affect. We have included 2 additional green bridges and widened some of them to keep the community connected and provide safe routes for wildlife. We've increased the number of new or upgraded walking paths, cycle paths and bridleways to 46 kilometres. That's 2 kilometres of paths for every 1 kilometre of new road. And we are creating 2 new landscape parks. One of these is at Tilbury Fields, to the south of the Northern Tunnel entrance and overlooking the Thames. We've proposed 2 options for the height here, and we're asking for your views on which option is preferred. The You Said We Did document is a summary of the responses we received during all of these previous consultations and how these have been used to further refine the project's design. It discusses each consultation in a separate chapter with a breakdown of the feedback we received, our responses to both negative and positive comments, and how we have made changes to our plans. This document, along with all of our consultation materials, is available on our consultation website. And I'll now hand over to John to talk you through some of the recent changes.
Hello, I'm John Barkman. I'm going to talk to you about some of the recent changes on the project, among other things. Your feedback during our design refinement consultation in the summer of 2020 has helped us further shape the development of the project. We've also made some changes to the project as a result of continued engagement with stakeholders, ongoing design work, assessments, and a greater understanding of the technical constraints to the building and the operation of the new road. Two important ways which our plans have developed relate to the proposed order limits. This is the land we need to build the new crossing and the utility works. The order limits, which is known as the development boundary in previous consultations, are the outermost edges of the Lower Thames Crossing project. They show the extent to which land can be acquired or used for the project and are areas in which the development consents order applies. Since our last consultation, we've reduced the area within the order limits from 22.9 to 22.2 square kilometres. We've also reduced the number of properties within the order limits to 130 from 150. We've been working very hard to reduce the impact on the landscape, local residents, landowners and businesses, while also reducing the visual impacts and restrictions associated with the utility networks when the work is complete. Here are some of the key changes. We've modified the A13 junction and are proposing an extra lane on the link road between the Lower Thames Crossing and the A13 eastbound to the Orsett roundabout. This will provide the additional capacity this link needs. We found an alternative location for the restringing of overhead power lines north of Linford. Changed the route of the utility diversion south of the A1013 and located the utilities along field boundaries to minimize the impact on this area. We've extended the order limits to the fields east and west of the A1089 to ensure permanent access rights to the overhead line network, and we've reduced the impact on the Ron Evans Memorial Field. Working with one of our partner gas companies, we've been able to reduce the impact on the Orsett Showground land and currently being used football pitches by the Orsett Park Royals Football Club. Therefore, the proposed replacement areas for the Orsett Showground has been removed from the order limits and is no longer needed. All of our changes are listed in Chapter 3 of our operations update. We're committed to providing a positive green legacy. We're therefore proposing two new open space sites, Tilbury Fields on the north bank of the Thames and Chalk Park in Kent. The Riverside Park will be just to the south of the northern tunnel entrance and will be around 45 hectares in size. This land is going through a phase of restoration and improvement and is next to the site of the former Tilbury Power Station. Over the past 10 years, many major infrastructure projects in London have contributed clean material to raise the ground level and restore the farmland back to the way it was. We're likely to be the last remaining project to work in this area. Tilbury Fields will be created using some 2 million cubic meters of material dug from the tunnels and associated works in the area. We're able to save around 470,000 lorry movements, as we won't need to transport this material on public roads. We want to know your views on the height and the landform once the design of the park is finalized. You'll find the specific question about this within the consultation response form. For further information on our open spaces, you can view the guide to consultation and operation documents on our consultation website. I'll now hand back over to my colleague Claire to talk about construction.
Thanks, John. So we are absolutely committed to reducing the impact of building the new crossing on you and the environment. In this section, we're going to give you an overview of where we plan to be working in your area and cover the sequence and timing of the work, its potential impact, and our plans to reduce that impact. You can find out more on our construction update document, which is on our website, and the detail is broken down in your area in our award summaries documents. Our work will be divided into 4 construction sections to help make sure they're delivered on time and with the minimum impact on local communities, the environment and road users. There are 2 sections in your area in Thurrock and South Essex, Section B and Section C. In today's webinar, we will be covering some more information about those. Construction section B spans the Thames, and on the northern side in Thurrock you can see the area stretching from the river to the south bank south of the Tilbury Loop railway line. There are 4 proposed construction compounds in section B. 3 are south of the river, so only one of these is in the north near Tilbury Marshes, west of East Tilbury and Coalhouse Fort. It is the northern tunnel entrance compound where the tunnel boring machines will begin their drive underneath the Thames towards Kent. The main access would be from the west through the port of Tilbury, with a separate access for cars and vans from Station Road. These access points would be connected through the site by an internal haul road. Work in this compound would be carried out 24 hours a day. The site would include temporary facilities such as a precast facility for tunnel lining production and storage, a separation plant for processing excavated materials, much of which will be used to create Tilbury Fields, a water treatment plant, hyperbaric facilities allowing specialist workers to remain in high-pressure compressed air environments, which would be necessary for certain of our tunnelling activities. Sleeping accommodation for construction workers, which will reduce the impact on local facilities, and other equipment to support tunnel construction, such as cranes and special vehicles to carry segments into the tunnel. Please see Chapter 4 of the construction update for more information. Construction section C encompasses the A13 junction with a southern spur reaching down to the Tilbury Loop railway line and up to Green Lane in the north, and to the Orsick Cock roundabout in the east. There are 7 proposed construction compounds in this section C, as you can see here on the map. Stifford Clays Road compounds east and west. These would be used for the construction of the northwest section of the A13 Lower Thames Crossing junction. We would build a temporary access haul road for the west compound from Meadbridge Road. Before then, Stifford's Clay Road would be used to access both east and west compounds. When the compounds are taken down, we would remove all temporary assets and the land would be reinstated. Long Lane compounds A and B would be used to support the construction of the slip roads south of the A13 and west of the A1089, as well as the western underpass bridge below the A13. Access would be via Long Lane. We would set up the compounds early in the construction period and they would be in use until August 2028. The Stanford Road compound would support works affecting the slip roads between the A13 and the A1013. The compound is located on Hornsby Lane, which would be permanently severed either side of the new road. Before the road is closed, we would put in turning arrangements in place. When the compound is taken down, we'd remove all of the temporary utility works and infrastructure, and the land would be reinstated. Brentwood Road compound would support works south of the A13 towards the Tilbury Loop railway line. Access would be from Brentwood Road between the Orsick Cock Junction and the Lower Thames Crossing route. The compound would be in place from early 2024 to mid-2028. Station Road compound would support works at the Tilbury Viaduct and on connecting roads. It would be in place for approximately 3 years from 2024. Where possible, temporary utility works needed for each compound would be carried out at the same time as the permanent works to reduce the length of our programme and its impact. Please see the construction update document on our consultation website for more details. Construction in each section would typically cover 3 main phases of work. This includes initial works, which involve setting up the construction compounds, main works, which will include the construction of the highways north and south of the Thames and all elements of the tunnels and their approaches, as well as utilities and environmental mitigation works, and finally, testing and commissioning, during which we will make sure that the new road and its infrastructure are safe and ready to use. This is a programme for work section B, which shows the sequence of the works. You can find more detail for this in chapter 4 of our construction update. Similarly, here is the programme for works in section C. If you want to find out more, please see Chapter 5 in our construction update. Normal working hours are proposed to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays and 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays, plus up to 1 hour before and after for start-up and close-down procedures. Working hours for certain activities, including earthworks, would be up to 10 p.m. on Monday to Saturday. Sometimes we might need an extension, which would be agreed in advance. Tunnelling construction activities and supporting works would be carried out in a continuous 24/7 basis. We have also identified very limited highways and utilities construction activities that may need to be done overnight and at weekends. For example, where we would be tying in new sections of the road to the existing road network. These works would be carried out at night and at weekends to maintain safety and reduce disruption to road, railway and utilities networks. These works are anticipated to be for short periods, and we would work closely with the local authority to manage any impacts on the communities. These are shown in the ward impact summaries and on the interactive map. During construction, we would carry out activities typically associated with a major infrastructure project. This includes tunnelling and earthworks, road surfacing and widening, and tie-in and finishing works. The image you can see here shows the start of work on a typical cutting. These works will inevitably have an impact on the area, but by applying best practice and using technology, we can reduce that impact. Here are some examples of how. We would build dedicated haul roads to significantly reduce the number of construction vehicles using existing roads near to the project, and we would promote car sharing and public transport to reduce the number of staff cars on these roads. We would use established practices and developing technology to minimize impacts on the environment and road users, such as consolidating materials into fewer deliveries. Construction areas and compounds would be located to support distinct works, reducing the need for vehicles and materials to move through the community to reach each location. We would have a delivery booking system and we would plan and monitor vehicle movements. Multimodal transport, using a combination of road, water and rail to optimize the transport and delivery of our materials. Planning, our contractors would produce construction logistics plans, and we would protect vulnerable road users by introducing appropriate measures to protect walkers, cyclists and horse riders. By using the methods mentioned, we will reduce our impact on local traffic, but during construction, some bus routes would still need to be temporarily diverted or changed. When we carry out work next to sensitive railway lines, there may also be some weekend or night closures that will affect rail services. You can find out more detail about what specific services will be affected in your ward in our ward impact summaries. Some public rights of way, such as footpaths or bridleways, may be affected by construction and need to be temporarily diverted or closed. Some public rights of way would be closed permanently and replaced by new ones during the construction period or once the new road is complete. Please see our ward summary documents to find out about the impacts near you. To minimise construction noise and vibration, we are proposing to locate our construction compounds as far away from residential areas as possible and build earthworks or bunds around them. We are also proposing measures such as closed board fencing installed around the construction compounds to provide screening, the use of low noise equipment where practical, and locating noisy activities as far as possible away from noise sensitive receptors. We are also introducing a number of ways to reduce the visual impact of the project on the landscape. Visual impacts will be reduced by carefully considering the location and layout of the compounds, using screens and temporary fencing, and positioning taller facilities as far away as possible from residential properties. We will also look at revegetating stockpiles to soften their appearance. Along the proposed Lower Thames Crossing, there are a number of existing utilities, including overhead power lines, high-pressure gas pipelines, electric cables and substation, gas mains, water pipes, sewers, and fibre optic and telecoms cables. These would need to be moved or diverted to build the new road. Our proposals for the utility works have evolved during the project's design and development. We've been working very closely with utilities companies to significantly reduce the environmental impacts and shorten the duration of these works. There should be no disruption to the supply of power, water, or any other utilities caused by our construction work. For more information on the planned utilities works, please go to Chapter 2 of the construction update. When we apply to the Planning Inspectorate for permission to build the new road, we will provide a range of documents that set out how we would make sure that the contractors effectively manage the impacts of construction on the environment and local communities. These are called control documents, and we are providing drafts of them as part of this consultation. They include the Code of Construction Practice, which provides a framework for how we would manage the construction activity, and it becomes a legally binding document that will ensure we deliver the environmental mitigation commitments we have made. If permission to build the new road is granted to us, the control documents would be developed further by our contractors and, once agreed upon, those contractors would have legal obligations to comply with the conditions they contain. Control documents are discussed in more detail in Chapter 1 of the construction update. For further information on all construction activities, please see the construction update document on our consultation website. And I now hand you back over to John.
Thank you, Claire. When the Lower Thames Crossing opens to traffic, the direct, reliable connection would bring people closer to jobs, businesses, closer to their customers and suppliers. The new crossing would offer reduced congestion at the Dartford Crossing and approach roads, additional capacity, and more reliable journeys across the River Thames east of London, and will support economic growth locally, regionally, and nationally. In Operations Update, we've summarised the impact of the operation of the road on your community and the local environment. This section presents a summary of the impacts of the new road and the tunnel after their planned opening in 2029. This video gives you an overview of how the new crossing will look like in Thurrock and South Essex. As you can see, the route north of the river emerges from the tunnel in Tilbury and runs north. It passes over the Tilbury Loop railway line on a viaduct and continues north between Chadwell St Mary and Linford. The route then heads northwest and passes under Muckingford Road and Holford Road green bridges. There are a couple of other more bridges as it swings to the west before it meets the A13 junction. To see a full fly-through of the route, please see the construction website. We've carefully assessed the road network in the area and predicted how it might perform in the future, with and without the new crossing, known as the do something and the do minimum scenarios. If the Lower Thames Crossing is not built, it's expected that high levels of traffic using the Dartford Crossing would lead to more incidents, increased journey times, and more delays where traffic conditions are worse than typically experienced. We predict the traffic would be nearly 12% higher in the morning peak and nearly 28% higher in the evening peak if the project were not built. As a result of the Lower Thames Crossing, there are predicted to be improvements in how the road network operates around the Dartford Crossing and on other roads in Gravesham and Thurrock. On the wider road network, conditions would remain largely unchanged, but congestion is predicted to increase on some roads, particularly those close to the project. But when built, the level of daily traffic using the Dartford Crossing would fall by an average of 21% in 2029 and 14% in 2044 compared to the do minimum scenario. Average speeds on part of the network would rise and journey times would become more reliable. In our operations update, you can find the precise maps of the impacts in your area, but to summarize, on many roads surrounding the crossing, such as the A13 west of the Lower Thames Crossing and the Dartford Crossing, the number of vehicles would fall when the Lower Thames Crossing opens. However, some roads on the approach to the new crossing would see an increase. You can find out more in our guide to construction and operations update. We've developed measures to reduce the noise and vibration at sensitive locations, such as people's homes or on wildlife, along the route and on some existing roads. For example, we've located the road as far as reasonably practical away from noise-sensitive locations. We've also designed the new road to be at low level, with approximately 80% of the route in a cutting, false cutting, or tunnel, and used earthworks where possible to reduce noise. Mitigation measures will also include the use of low noise road surfacing technologies on new road and resurfaced roads, and noise barriers at certain locations along the route where the earthwork measures are not possible. In regard to vibration, the impacts from road traffic vibration would not be significant because the Lower Thames Crossing new road surface would be constructed in accordance with highway specification that ensures a smooth road surface. The main methods of controlling noise would be, where practical, to design a road within landscape features such as cuttings and bunds or walls of earth. However, where impacts are the greatest, we would still install noise barriers, typically fences or wooden fences, in addition to these earthworks features. The use of low noise surfacing would also reduce the traffic noise once the road is in use. This map shows where noise barriers have been incorporated into design along the A13 along the new road. Here's an example of where our noise barriers are located. You can find out more about the location of the proposed noise barriers in Chapter 5 of the Operations Update. And this image, which is contained in the Operation Update, shows the areas in Thurrock and South Essex with an adverse or beneficial change to the traffic noise in the opening year. As you can see, there are some areas with a major adverse change of greater than 5 decibels and some with no change and major beneficial changes. To find out more about specific changes to noise in your area, please see our ward impact summaries. We've reduced the visual impact of the road by placing around 80% of the routes in a cutting, false cutting, tunnel, or where possible use earthworks or new planting to conceal the road. As our design has developed, we've taken some significant steps to avoid or minimize significant effects on local communities and the environment where possible. Some examples include a tunnel set back from protected wetland to mitigate the effects on bird species, relocating working areas to mitigate the habitat loss in ancient woodland and triple SI sites, designing 7 new green bridges to connect habitats and species on either side of the new road, the creation of habitats for protected species, and forging new green corridors to join habitats along the project route. But where we've been able to, we've gone further, and we will be delivering a net gain in biodiversity values across the Lower Thames Crossing area. This includes 260 hectares of new woodland created, a 200% increase, over 400 hectares of arable land converted into semi-natural habitats, 40 new ponds representing a 40% increase, 80 kilometers of new hedgerow then lost, 120% increase, 7.3 kilometers of new ditches representing a 10% increase. There are likely to be impacts on the journey times of some bus and coach services if traffic speeds of the roads they use are changed once the new road opens. Most of the routes would not be affected, and the impact for individual passengers would depend on where they get on or off at a particular service. For further information on specific bus routes it would affect can be found in Chapter 4 of the Operations Update. Working with local authorities and organisations such as Sustrans, a UK-based walking and cycling charity, we've developed a programme of improvements for walkers, cyclists and horse riders that will connect local communities with green spaces and promote active travel choices. Following previous consultations and targeted stakeholder engagement, we developed a walkers, cyclist and horse riding strategy, which we shared at our design refinement consultation that examined the value of existing and potential routes. A list of possible opportunities was developed that would result in 46 kilometers of new, realigned or improved footpaths, cycleways and bridleways. In determining these, we considered factors such as connections for employment, education, recreational green space, as well as addressing historic severance. More detail on assessing the environmental impacts and mitigation is available in Chapter 5 of the Operations Update, and local information is available in the ward impact summaries. This slide shows the proposed new, realigned and improved walking, cycling and horse riding routes to the north of the River Thames. To the north of the river, between the Northern Tunnel entrance and the A13, our proposals include east to west commuter connections to make it easy to access employment by bike, also mitigating the severance caused by to East Tilbury and Linford. Between the A13 and around the M25 junction, improvements include creating recreational walking, cycling, horse riding routes from the Thames Chase and South Ockington Little Bellhouse Country Park to Orsett Fen and beyond, and upgrading the existing public rights-of-way along the additional sections to create routes that loop around and connect people to green spaces. I'll now hand over to my colleague Claire, who will talk about air quality.
Thanks, John. We fully understand that many people have concerns about the effect that the project will have on air quality. Although during operation of the Lower Thames Crossing, some areas are predicted to experience decreased air quality due to changes in traffic flows across the region, there will be improvements in other areas and an improvement in air quality in the project-wide area overall. The change in concentrations of pollutants has been assessed, and a reduction of concentrations of nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter is predicted at receptors between existing conditions and future conditions before the Lower Thames Crossing opens. One of the key aims of the project is to relieve the congested Dartford Crossing and approach roads and improve their performance by providing free-flowing north-south capacity. The Lower Thames Crossing would take over 13 million vehicles off the Dartford Crossing, which means it would be less congested and air quality could improve. Our air quality monitoring has found that the Dartford Crossing is currently exceeding standards due to vehicle emissions. When the Lower Thames Crossing is open, air quality at Dartford would improve and areas around the Dartford Crossing would no longer exceed air quality standards. There are expected to be reductions in vehicle emissions over this period, for example, due to the uptake of electric and alternatively fueled vehicles, in part driven by the banning of sales of diesel and petrol cars from 2030. At opening year, based on the model used for our first DCO application in 2020, the assessments show that there would be localised increases on certain roads, such as the M2 junction 1 to 2, causing air quality to get worse and exceed the national air quality objective for NO2. However, results also show numerous air quality improvements around the A282 Dartford Crossing, where existing air quality is poor, due to significant reductions in traffic and congestion. In total, 24 receptors are expected to experience a change in air quality in those areas where concentrations of pollutants are forecast to exceed the air quality objectives set out by the government. Of these 24 receptors, though, 15 are predicted to experience an improvement in air quality. The remaining 9 are predicted to experience poorer air quality once the route is open. Our air quality assessments are based on the traffic flows predicted from the traffic model, which is explained in Chapter 4 of the Operations Update. One of the biggest operational changes as a result of the Lower Thames Crossing is an improvement to traffic flows and a decrease in journey times across the River Thames and across many parts of the Lower Thames area. One clear benefit of this is faster, easier access to existing jobs in the local and wider area. In our ward impact summaries, we flag how many existing jobs this brings within a 30-minute and 60-minute commute of your local area. In this area, the largest increase within a 30-minute journey by car would be in the wards of Tilbury, where some residents would have access to more than 225,000 additional jobs, over an 80% increase. When you look at what jobs you could reach within an hour, the increase is even greater. The largest increase within a 60-minute journey time by car would be for those who live in East Tilbury, where 615,000 jobs would fall within a 60-minute journey time by car, a 34% increase. These journey times are based on travelling at morning peak times between 7 and 8 a.m. You can find out more about operations when the road is open in our operational update. Our ward impact summaries are among the documents produced for this consultation. Each chapter includes a ward-specific overview of the impacts and benefits during construction and once the road is open and in operation. It has topics such as environmental impacts and impacts on the community. The wards included are those that are directly affected by the project or where the wards fall within the order limits. To make the ward summaries more user-friendly, we have split the document into 3 sections to cover wards to the north and south of the River Thames. There are 2 sections for the north of the Thames, covering 12 wards shown here. In each chapter, we summarise the current situation and explain how construction and operation would affect the ward. We set out what the impacts are predicted to be and the measures we would use to mitigate them. Where there are no impacts, this is highlighted. Ward summaries cover the following: traffic, public transport, footways, bridleways and cycle routes, visual, noise and vibration, air quality, health, biodiversity and contamination management. To find out more about the construction and operational impacts of the project, please have a look at the ward impact summary for your area. And with that, we'd like to thank you very much for your time, and we'll hand you back to the live Q&A.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, John. And thank you all for listening. So this marks the end of the pre-recorded section of this webinar. And as we mentioned at the start, our goal today was to provide you with an overview of the changes we've made since the design refinement consultation last year, as well as our plans to build and operate the Lower Thames Crossing and how we'll mitigate the impact. If you'd like more detailed information, we'd suggest you visit www.highwaysengland.co.uk/LTC consultation. There you can access a digital copy of all the consultation materials. So we're conscious we've thrown an awful lot of information at you, so let's take a quick break for 3 minutes now, and then we'll be right back to run through some of the questions that you've submitted before and throughout this webinar. See you soon. Hello and welcome back. Okay, so now time for some of your questions. So some questions have been coming in. I'm going to take a look at our first question. We've had a question about so someone has asked, the Queen Elizabeth Bridge was meant to be free to users once it was paid for. This person has said they appreciate the need for cross-Thames travel, but they're asking, will this come as an additional expense to the already penalised road user? Tim, is it possible for you to take that question?
Absolutely. So charges are decided by the Department for Transport, and that includes who is charged and how much they get charged. The Department for Transport has a policy of charging for estuarial crossings, like the Lower Thames Crossing and the Dartford Crossing. The charge currently levied on the Dartford Crossing is designed to manage congestion, and that's one of the reasons that it's free to cross after 10 p.m. at night and before 6 a.m. in the morning. Our proposals assume that both the Lower Thames Crossing and Dartford crossings would be charged at the same rates. We anticipate there'll be a residence discount, which gives a discount to those who live in the borough or which the entrances to the crossings are located. So in the Lower Thames Crossings case, this would be for Thurrock and Gravesham residents.
Okay, so our next question is on a subject that we know is of concern to many people, and that is the environment. And a question's been asked, what's being done to mitigate the environmental damage to Thames Chase? Gareth, is that a question that you can take?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Obviously, there would be an impact upon Thames Chase Community Forest. We would need to use around 14.5 hectares of land, some of which we'd only require on a temporary basis for construction. We're replacing this land with approximately 50.5 hectares of open space, which is all directly linked to the existing woodland. This would be landscaped to complement the current site and connect to the existing paths in the area. In addition to this, we're in regular discussions with Forestry England and the Thames Chase Trust so that we meet the requirements when replacing the land. That's the sort of local response to that. And then across the scheme as a whole, across the route, we're providing an additional 260 hectares of woodland. We're also providing new public footbridge over the M25, creating a stronger link to the Thames Chase Community Forest. In addition to the Lower Thames Crossing proposals, we're also proposing to provide a new 100-hectare community woodland at Hull Farm in Essex. That's a very brief summary. If you're looking for more information, please look in the operations update.
Thank you. A lot to take in there, Gareth. Thank you very much. Next question, Tim, one for you, I think. In respect of road safety, are there any plans for public facilities, i.e. washrooms or resting places?
So we're not proposing roadside facilities as part of the Lower Thames Crossing. In our first consultation in 2018, the statutory consultation, we did set out a rest and service area down in the East Tilbury area. We sought feedback from the public and stakeholders about whether we should include something at that location and what that could look like. Following that consultation, we removed this from our proposals because of a number of concerns raised by residents, a reassessment of how the facility would impact on the local environment, noting that that is an area of greenbelt land as well. And we also undertook a reassessment of how the route could be managed and maintained. We do recognise that there is a need for additional rest and service facilities in the region. And Highways England are working with service area operators, the haulage industry and other road user groups to consider the most appropriate location for any further service area provision on the wider strategic road network. In any facility that were proposed in the future would need to seek planning permission from the relevant planning authority. Now, it is worth noting that down in Kent, near to Shoreham Woods, we are also proposing a car park that will provide locals with access into the Shoreham Woods Country Park. There's not anything like that north of the river.
Thank you for that, Tim. Gareth, a question for you, I think, asking us how we can limit damage and things like road closures, and how we can protect people during the construction stage from fast and careless drivers. I think truck drivers they're referring to specifically.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, there's a couple of things, some of which were picked up in the earlier presentation. The first one is obviously reducing the amount of movements that you'd have coming from the local road network onto and off our project. And to reduce that, we've looked to reduce the amount of materials that are being moved off site and then being imported onto the site. So that's the first thing we've done. We've also looked in our traffic management plans to reduce the impact on the road users and local communities whilst ensuring a safe working environment. Clearly, there will be some temporary traffic management will be required for the construction of some of the new roads and some of the service diversions, particularly where we're replacing roads and bridges which cross the route of the Lower Thames Crossing. As stated previously, we will be looking to maximise the use of haul roads, which are the roads that are built within the work sites that are only used by construction vehicles, and this will significantly reduce the number of vehicles on the public road network. We'll also look, as I said earlier, looking to reuse as much material as possible to reduce the number of heavy goods vehicles trips. And where closures are required, our contractors would plan any closures or traffic management with the relevant local authority. Our contractors will also have a number of rules and regulations that drivers who work for them and their subcontractors must follow, such as set routes to and from the site and speeds. And all contractors will be members of the fleet operator recognition system, the considered contractor, and also construction logistic community safety standards that really, and these are standards that set out the good behaviours that we would expect of drivers using the public network. The roads affected, the proposed traffic management and the purpose and the duration of any traffic management, these are detailed within the ward summaries.
Thank you, Gareth, there from one quite broad-ranging question and answer to quite a specific one now. Tim, I wondered if you could take this next one. We've been asked, what's the impact on Whitecroft's care home?
So Whitecroft Care Home, which is up near the A13, is one of our concerns. Residents in there are some of our closest neighbours, and it is very close to all of the construction works associated with the A13 junction. Doing right by them is one of our top priorities. But because of their proximity to the works, there will be noise, air quality impacts during the works, which we will look to mitigate with various control measures. These are set out in the Code of Construction Practice documents and the Register of Environmental Action and Commitments, which form part of the consultation. We're working closely with Whitecroft Care Home to keep the owners fully informed of our proposals and the plans as we develop them further. And we've shared the findings of our environmental impact report with the care home and are committed to keeping in touch as the project progresses. In particular, we've engaged with the care home's noise expert to work through more details with them so that they fully understand the nature of the works that will be happening next to them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim. Thanks very much indeed. Gareth, next question for you. Have you increased 24/7 working, and what specifically is planned, if anything, around Baker Street?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Sarah. So we have now developed more information on our planned working hours, particularly for a number of the services and utility diversion works. With the exception of the tunnel activities, normal working hours are proposed to be 7 AM to 7 PM on weekdays and 7 AM to 4 PM Saturdays, with some preparation and some finish times beyond that. There are some additional locations where we may need to carry out some very limited overnight and weekend works. This is to reduce any disruption caused by our works to the existing road net, trains, or utility works, where it will be safer for the public and staff to work at night. Around Baker Street in particular, our proposed weekend and overnight workings include some work at the A13 tie-ins, new bridges over the lower Thames Crossing, such as Mackingford Road and Holford Road, and especially near Baker Street, the demolition of the Rectory Road Bridge and construction of the new bridge, and also the demolition of the existing A1013 bridge and the A1089, and the construction of the replacement bridges. And there's also additional, as I've said, the A13 tie-in works and the A13 gantry installations. So that's predominantly a very quick summary of the nighttime working. Obviously, we would look to work with the local authority to manage any impacts on the local communities. And again, the relevant information that captures this is set out in our ward impact summaries.
Great, thank you, Gareth. Another question for Tim now, this time about noise, asking us, how were the locations for the noise barriers decided, including the heights of the noise barriers?
Okay. So we carry out detailed assessments of the expected noise impacts, and in order to do that we take the traffic model which forecasts how traffic flows will change, and we use that to calculate how much noise will be produced from the road on local sites and communities along the length of the scheme. From that, and understanding how these communities are impacted, we choose where we need to site the noise barriers in order to reduce that impact, mitigate that impact, and include those into our proposals. The noise barriers are used to dampen and minimise the sounds of the road traffic noise by providing a block, essentially, between the source of the noise on the road and the homes. And the way that noise travels means that the barrier needs to be placed at a certain height in order to effectively create that barrier between the source and the residents. And therefore, when we calculate the height of the barrier, we're thinking about a number of different things. We're thinking about where the source of the noise is along the road. We're thinking about where the community, the receptor, is located and how effective the barrier will be at actually reducing the amount of noise that transfers across. Though we do consider other aspects as well, and in certain locations we will look at lower heights where there's a significant visual impact. It is worth noting that we do have some high noise barriers in the Thurrock area, which relate to the physical relationship between the road and the house. So along the Tilbury Viaduct, where the route is above ground level, we include noise barriers along that stretch. And next to several very nearby residential properties in Muckenford Road and Brentwood Road, we also have some noise barriers. And at the A13 junction, near the Travellers site, Baker Street and Orsett. It's also worth noting that 80% of the route is either below ground level or within a false cutting, which provides screening of the road and reduces both the noise and the visual impacts.
That's great. Thank you, Tim. Really helpful explanation. Gareth, another question for you coming now, asking why is there an additional lane onto the A13?
Okay, yeah, this is really down to the new developments that have been given planning consent since our last consultation. Now we've taken into account those new developments. There's now an increased capacity on those roads linking the Lower Thames Crossing to the A13 eastbound and to Orsett Cock roundabout. So we require the additional lane to ride that additional capacity. So you know, the lane goes from passes through Baker Street and, as I said, runs to the Orsett Cock roundabout. And we have designed this without needing to take additional land. There's far more detail presented in the operations update. And so if you look at chapter 3, pages 69 to 70, that sets out in detail what we're planning to do there.
Oh, thanks very much, Gareth. And sticking with the A13, Tim, a question for you. Someone has said the A13 is already congested, but we're proposing to narrow the lanes and reduce speed limits. What's going to be done to reduce the impact?
So we recognise that the A13 is already congested, and of course Thurrock have been doing a lot of work to improve the A13 recently. We do work to reduce impacts, as we know how frustrating narrow lanes and reduced speed limits can be. The works on the A13 are limited in duration. The reduced lanes and the speed limit will only be in place during the construction works, after which the A13 will return to normal operation. We will need to have temporary narrow lanes and reduced speed limit down to 60 miles per hour on the A13 westbound between Orsett Cock and the A1089 for a 3-month period between June 2025 and August 2025, and on the A13 eastbound between the A1089 and Orsett Cock for a 3-month period between April 2028 and June 2028. During the switch over to the new alignment of the A13 westbound on slip, the Orsett Cock junction is scheduled for September 2025. Now, Gareth talked about a number of the measures that we've put in place to control the traffic during construction, and we'll be working with the local authority to look at how we manage traffic during the construction works, both our construction traffic, but also the needs for the community who also need to travel around the area whilst we're constructing. Those measures are set out in one of the draft documents in the consultation, the outline traffic management plan for construction. So you can look there and see what measures are being put in place and understand how we're proposing to control the impacts during that period.
Thank you, Tim. And I'm going to ask you again to answer what I think is going to be our last question of the evening. We've had a question about the use of the Dartford Crossing currently, and asking, are numbers really back up to their pre-pandemic levels? Have you got any information about that?
Yes, it's been quite interesting watching traffic flows through the COVID pandemic. And clearly, as we've all gone about very different changes in our lives, we've seen a lot of variation with some quite significant drops during the very strict lockdowns when there was minimal amounts of people actually leaving their homes. However, as the lockdowns relaxed and long before the recent changes in the regulations, the flows on the Dartford Crossing returned up to normal. And in fact, in certain flows, we are seeing even more HGVs travelling across Dartford Crossing than was seen back in 2019. Even during the pandemic, Dartford regularly exceeded its design capacity, of 135,000 vehicles a day. And as I say, in the last month, it's had its busiest day ever for freight. So although COVID is likely to change how we work going forward and is likely to affect a lot of different things about our society, what we have seen is that the Dartford Crossing remains as important as ever and actually remains as congested as ever. And therefore, that really leads us to still need to deliver the Lower Thames Crossing.
Interesting. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Gareth, and thank you everybody for all the questions that you've submitted this evening. I hope we managed to get to as many as we possibly could. Just a reminder, please do let us know your views on our community impacts consultation. All the information, including the response form, is available at www.highwaysengland.co.uk/LTC consultation. By far the easiest way to comment is by filling out our online consultation response form, but you can of course submit a response by using any of the methods listed on the slide there. Should you know anyone without internet access, they're also able to just simply give us a call on 0300 123 5000 and provide a response over the phone. Responses will be accepted up until 23:59, that's 1 minute to midnight, on the 8th of September 2021. And if you'd like to comment on aspects of our proposals from earlier consultations, please use the other comments section on the response form. So, and final reminder before we wrap up for this evening, the consultation closes on the 8th of September. Please do make sure that you respond to the consultation by post, email, or through our website. So thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. Thank you to my fellow panelists, our British Sign Language interpreters, and of course all the technical wizards who make it all happen behind the scenes. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.